adjourn the meeting, sorry. Pick me up on points there. Okay, so if we can adjourn this meeting to allow, who is it who's going to speak, Pam?
There's a lady called Helen Faulkner. There were others, but they have had to go to a separate meeting because the AGM ran on until 7 o'clock. So poor Helen is the only one who's stuck here now.
Okay, so could I hand over to you, Helen, please?
Hi, thank you for having me. I was asked by Pam if I would come along just to try and show my support or speak up for the use of the tennis courts being a multi-use pitch. So I'm a local teacher. I teach in Bishop Gore, and more importantly, I'm a mum of 2 girls. I play netball myself, have done for 40 odd years. And over COVID, the girls, particularly girls' sport, has really struggled because of the lack of outdoor facilities. There's lots of football, lots of rugby, and I know, don't get me wrong, that the girls play football and rugby as well, but we've really struggled for netball. So it's only been in the last 2 or 3 weeks that we've been able to go back. There are local courts, so we can go to Bishopston, but if you've ever been to Bishopston of an evening, it's absolutely jam-packed with football and all sorts of other sports. And Pam asked about the, I know Pam through swimming, I said, oh my gosh, if you could do anything to promote girls' sport, particularly, so my girls are 14 and 11, and to be able to have a local pitch. So we have been down to the tennis court, so I've taken them and a couple of their friends because I coach netball. And we've run around on the pitches opposite the toilet block, which is, breaks every single health and safety guideline going. But just to get them out, just to get them around, running and throwing a ball and all that sort of stuff. So when this came up as a possibility, I was like, oh yes, please. Because at the moment, I said to Pam, I can list 10 different cars that every Thursday night are travelling over to Kevin Hengoyd's school. Because Treforest, who a lot of the local youngsters play for, play over there in all the different year groups. So we have like a taxi service going over to the other side of Swansea every Thursday night for training. And it would be absolutely amazing if there was something locally that we could use and encourage girls, particularly, especially, sort of those young teenagers, because they very quickly fall out of fashion and don't do sport anymore. If we could do anything to encourage them to get off their phones and to get out and play locally, that would be amazing. So thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you for that, Helen. Thank you very much.
Could I ask Helen a question, Chair? Is that all right? Just a very quick question. Yeah. I'm just wondering if there was a netball or basketball facility at Langland, if there wasn't floodlighting, would you just envisage it being used just in the summer months then, or?
Well, obviously we could go sort of straight after school. The kids could go down there and they could play together. But yes, obviously in the winter, which is the main season for netball, if there wasn't floodlighting, then it would restrict the use during the winter months. But I think at the weekends and after school and things, for an hour, it would still get used.
Would there still be the demand for the full size pitch if it was just the summer months?
I think at the weekends it definitely would, but obviously in the evening, certainly as a parent, I wouldn't let my 11-year-old go down there in the winter on her own. No, but my 14-year-old, probably I'd let her go down for an hour or so, as it's getting darker, but not. Yeah, I suppose you're restricting the younger ones if in the winter months.
Okay. Again, thank you for your contribution, Helen, and thank you for taking the questions. So, Clark, if you can reconvene the meeting now, then.
Yeah, Chair. Did we do the minutes of the last meeting?
Oh, that's going back. Yeah, I must have tipped that. Yes, okay, so let's go back to that point then. Minutes of the monthly meeting held on the 14th of April. Sorry, I must have missed that point. everybody accept that? Or anybody got any points they want to raise? Carrie?
Oh, God.
No.
Sorry, I'm accepting.
Oh, you're
sorry,
accepting, yeah. And
I
Gareth's
just put my
accept.
hand up when you said, can we all
Yeah.
accept?
Okay, so we're all accepting that. Okay, and Gareth as well second that. So if we can move on then to the proposal for Langland tennis courts. Is it Rebecca or Pam who is speaking to this?
Yeah, I'll speak to this. So we've put this in, it would ideally have obviously come from Community and Social Wellbeing Committee, which is why Pam and myself are proposing and seconding as chair and vice chair of that committee. This is to try and move us along on the question of whether or not we're going to install a gate system at Langland. I know that there's been some concern about making sure that the facilities at Langland both remain free and accessible to users, but also are well looked after, and we protect the investment that we've put into them. So this proposal is based on the information that we've had from Tennis Wales. We've also had a lot of extra information from Tennis Wales in the form of written answers to questions after it. That just seemed more effective and more efficient rather than having another meeting with them. What the proposal is today is for support to go ahead with applying for the funding for the gate system and for working with Tennis Wales to set up exactly the logistics of how it will work. I know there will be questions about, how far in advance can you book? Will it be free for all users, or will coaches need to pay? How many sessions in a week can you book? All very good questions. I would refer those back to committee where we will work out the detail of exactly the operations of the gate system. But for today, I think we're moving towards a position where there is some consensus around the fact that it will be useful for us to be able to collect data about the use of the site, and the gate system is the best way to do that.
Okay, Will.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, two questions. One point really. I don't know if necessarily everyone's agreed on it being completely free. So I'd like that personally to go back to committee just to be discussed rather than assuming it's going to be free. There's no reason why it shouldn't be free, but I think there definitely needs to be a conversation because,
Yeah.
To charge £1 an hour, for example, which all that money could go back into the maintenance of the courts themselves, and you could make it free for under certain age groups and people of different demographics, whatever. So I'd like that to be spoken about at the committee if possible. Second question, or for you, Steve, really. If you remember, when we had the presentation from Tennis Wales, there was also there was different tiers of how much we pay for different services, and one of them included a maintenance, and I think it was every 10 years they'd recover the courts, or they'd maintain the nets, etc. Is that I don't see that on this agenda as an option, and I'm just wondering.
Yeah, shall I answer that, Will? Because this proposition, most of the wording comes from Tennis Wales' offer that they made to us when we had our first meeting. So this allows further discussion on the matters you just discussed. So it's not committing the council or Tennis Wales to anything other than engaging on a debate on the best way of moving forward. So agreeing to do the gates, and then we'll work with LTA and come up with various proposals of how we feel best that the courts work. And that will come back to council to discuss and approve.
Okay, so there'll be, just to clarify, in the future there'll be an option where we just pay X amount, or a further amount we could vote on potentially that would also include maintenance long term, yeah?
Yes, so the
Okay,
two
thanks.
ends of the spectrum are, we don't get involved with LTA at all apart from the gates, and we manage it ourselves, or that we pass the whole management of the courts on to them and pay them a fee, but they cover all the maintenance.
Yeah, that one sounds best. Thanks.
Okay, Rob, did you want to come in?
Am I on mute? No. Yeah, it was just that I was under the impression that City and County made it quite clear to us that we wouldn't get a lease they wouldn't give us the lease for the courts if we were going to be charging for their use, and that was only we got it on the condition that the tennis was free for all.
No, that wasn't
No, that's not.
that wasn't the term of the lease, Rob.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, any other questions, queries? Okay then, so can I just put it to the vote? All of those in favour of accepting this proposal?
Chair, can I just
Sorry.
interrupt? I think what Councillor Thomas was proposing an
Oh, sorry.
amendment to withdraw the lines about on the basis that access remains free, because he's arguing that that should be deleted later.
Well, yeah, but I thought that
Okay.
was going to be this. Rebecca, could you clarify this? Was this to be discussed at council
So the
committee?
so the proposal, as is written there, does include the words on the basis that access remains free as a minimum to residents booking for social play. That's my wording because it's my proposal, because I think it should be a free resource as it is at the moment, at least to residents. And I'm very much willing to have a conversation about whether there are other users that we would want to have a small charge for to go towards the maintenance costs. But so I would not accept an amendment on the basis that Will is suggesting to take out all free play, because to me that's quite important.
I don't think that's what Will is suggesting, to be
No, I'm
honest.
not. No.
No.
So are you happy with the wording as it is, Will?
All right. Granted, I didn't listen to it as it was read out just then, but what I'm trying to say is that I think there needs to be some debate on who is charged potentially, because at the moment it reads that everyone's charged, right? So, for example, tourists, maybe we might want to charge, or we might want to charge people that use the courts more than twice a week. If the same accounts, if the same person's using it, even a recreational player, if a recreational's using it, I know several people that play 3 times a week. Maybe you'd want to give someone else a chance to get on there for free, if because they're taking up all the key slots. I'm just saying there needs to be some thought about maybe, I don't know, it depends what the capabilities of the system are, so maybe we need to know the capabilities of the system before we delve any deeper.
So the capabilities of the system are quite vast, and allow for a lot of flexibility. So I think both of those scenarios that you just described would be possible. You could book 2 free sessions a week, and your 3rd session you pay. I think that would be possible. I think the wording that as it is at the moment allows for that flexibility.
The way I'm reading it, it says access remains free as a minimum to residents booking for social play. Will, have you got a problem with that? Because that's as a minimum, isn't it? Because it is allowing the possibility for other people to pay.
Yeah, I suppose it just says that all residents are always free. That does it potentially, or
no? I don't think so.
I'm not too hung up on it. I'm sure common sense will prevail if we want to,
Because I think as Rebecca sort of says, if somebody's playing 2 times, then they might have to pay for the 3rd time or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. So are we happy to vote? Oh, sorry.
Ian wants to speak.
Sorry. You tucked away in the corner again. Sorry.
Yes, I'm always stuck in the corner here. Anyway, I'm quite sure there's going to be an awful lot of people that would be more than happy to pay on such esteemed courts. I don't see what the issue there is. I think it's a question of managing the facility. Now, if we're going to be encouraging a coach there, and if we're going to be encouraging some of the local schools to be going there, well, I don't see that we would be wanting to charge those. But, let's be honest, it's a fantastic facility. Yeah. If you want to go swimming, do you have to pay to go to the leisure centre?
Yeah, but
saying that, have to play, if you want to play tennis at Ashley Road, or if you want to go to the tennis centre on the other side of Swansea, do you have to pay? Of course you do.
Yeah, but
so I don't see a disparity. Why we should be worrying about this?
No, but again,
we need the flexibility for charging.
That's what we have.
That's what we have. That's what I'm saying. That is what's in the that's what's in the wording as it stands. Remains free as a minimum to residents booking for social play. So there is the possibility for charging. Okay. So can I just push this to the vote now so that we can move on, please? All those in favour of accepting this proposal? Okay, I think that's pretty much accepted. So then if we move on to point 8. Yes, point 8, recommendations by the Cultural and Tourism Wellbeing Committee, Mumbles Rugby Club, outdoor hospitality area. The Community Council has been approached by Mumbles Rugby Club with a request to fund the hire of 4 picnic tables or a 4-week period starting the 30th of April so that they can be set in outdoor hospitality area during the period when premises can only be served customers outdoor. Cost of hire is £30 per table per week, which means the total cost will be £480, but can be funded at the underspend of the events budgets. As arrangements for the hire had to be made in advance of the start date, the 31st, the chair consulted the Cultural and Tourism Wellbeing Committee and gave approval to hire the table. Therefore, committee and council are asked to give retrospective approval for this hire and tables on behalf of Mumbles Rugby Club. Any?
There's just one amendment there. There's an actual mistake. The funding of this is coming from the COVID ops underspend.
Okay, just a clarification there. Carrie?
Yeah, just to confirm that in exactly the same way as Southend Gardens is, that actually these tables are not for the private use of Mumbles Rugby Club, but actually are available for any member of the public who chooses to be able to use them.
No, not exactly. I mean, the rugby club have approached us because it's on their land adjoining the rugby club. So they had concerns about, does that mean that people from the William Hancock can use it? And the answer is no. The Southend Gardens is in a public space, council land, and that's available to be used from anybody, not just people, businesses there or chip shop or the takeaways or whatever, but people can take a picnic there if they want. This was specifically for the use of the rugby club because they've got a cafe license for outside. They haven't been able to open for the last few months.
Oh, you're cold. They're cold now. They've had a
Okay. Rebecca, can somebody mute Rebecca, please?
Oh, poor Jackson. I thought let him have a nice play. Yeah. The wars, Tony.
What did she say?
Jackson's having 64 tomorrow. Yeah.
Rebecca, can you mute
Steve, go on, Steve. Can somebody mute Rebecca?
Wrong one. Sorry. Yes, hang on.
So basically, you know, this is to help the rugby club. They followed all the guidelines. They're desperate to open. I went to the first night that they had the tables there, and it was bouncing, and it was a lovely atmosphere. So,
okay.
So that triangle of land is not owned by Swansea Council?
No, it's the rugby club.
Right, I'm just concerned that we normally our view would be that we actually provide support for the public rather than for an individual private club.
Well, it is for
and I'm just slightly concerned that we are setting a precedent whereby any other business in Mumbles could come to us and say, well, we'd like you to provide us with some tables for our private use.
Okay, well, it's not for a private club. It's for the customers who go there, which is the public.
No, it's a private club. You have to be a member.
Speaking, thank you, Carrie.
Please, yes.
It is a private club. It's one of our oldest, member-led by local residents, member-led clubs, sports clubs, teams. And I think we have a duty to support them as much as we have a duty to support any business in Mumbles.
Okay, Will.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's not members only bar. I'm pretty sure anyone can go in there. And secondly, it's a couple of benches. Let's move on. Let them have them.
Yeah. Sarah.
Yeah, well-being, but I can understand where Carrie's coming from, that we're going to find ourselves being in a position where someone will say, well, you didn't support our pub. Where's our support? Well, it's, you know, everyone's going through a really difficult time right now. Isn't there any way they could share that seating with the pubs that are nearby? Wouldn't they do that?
Well, the problem, if you stop the meeting, I'm prepared to talk about that. But can we suspend the meeting for me to talk about that?
We can suspend the meeting if you so wish. Have we got any members of the public in here now? But
Well, it's been recorded, isn't it? I just want to
yeah,
stop.
that's what I'm saying to Steve. You'd have to suspend the meeting and stop the recording. But I do think that.
I'd rather not waste the time, to be honest. But
Well, because we're talking about a 4-week period.
Exactly.
When is this period going to be up by?
Well, they've had it just over a week now, so we're only on about till the beginning of June.
Okay. Well, can I put it to the council that we vote on accepting this, or if we don't want to accept it, if we want to discuss it further, can you vote against it? So all those in favour of accepting this recommendation, can you indicate? Okay, thank you. So if we can move on to point 9B, festivals and events. A list of planned events in the Mumbles area have been obtained from Swansea Council, though it's still unclear whether events will be allowed to go ahead due to ongoing COVID-19 restrictions. There is a free weekend at the start of August 2021, but that was thought to be too soon to organise the event, and also first 2 weekends of September. It was felt that the event combining the food and music the weekend of 10th and 12th of September, possibly on a seated-only basis, may be possible, although care would have to be taken on early bookings for tables, chairs, etc. Rebecca recommended that the Cultural and Tourism Wellbeing Committee is given delegated authority to organise a food and music-based event in September 2021, subject to the event being logistically possible and allowed under the prevailing COVID-19 restrictions in place at the time. The event would be funded from budget CL10 Mumbles Fest, CL15 Food Festival, and CL18 event income less any variation for the budget approved elsewhere. Okay, any questions, any points anybody wants to raise in relation to that? No, so can I put it to the vote as to whether we accept that recommendation? All those in favour? Yes, okay, that's recommended. So if we go on to, let's see, Social Care and Frontline Workers Day. I won't go through it all, but it is recommended that the event outlined above be arranged to commemorate the NHS Social Care and Frontline Workers Day on the 5th of July 2021 at a cost of more than £500 to be funded from underspend CL10, the Mumbles Fest. Any questions on that one? We've discussed this quite a lot in the past. If not, can I put it to vote? All those in favour of recommending this proposal? That's it, great. Ostream Market. This is a suggestion from the Ostream Market that about an outdoor craft event being held in the Ostream Centre. There will be need to do some loose stonework and paving work, which would be all part as well of us regenerating the Ostream Centre. So again, recommended the Mumbles Community Council support the planned monthly outdoor craft market increase to meet the cost of the music up to a minimum of £50 per week for the market, and at any other times over the summer months where appropriate. The cost would be met from underspends on the CL2 Mumbles Fest budget.
Just a little amendment to that is that the buskers who would be paid £50 per person to busk would also be able to busk and have, a hat out.
Okay.
Doesn't license.
You don't need a license to busk in Swansea.
They need a license?
No.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, Carrie.
Just why is it that the Ostream Centre will be getting the income from it, but we are paying for the music? Should it not be that the music is paid out of the income from renting out the stalls? Would seem a logical way of doing it.
Well, that's not on the table, is it?
Are they getting they're getting the rental from the stalls, are they?
Yeah.
We discussed that, had we, Martin, in the meeting? I don't remember that being discussed.
No, I got to admit, I can't remember off the top of my head. I was just wondering what the situation was, but maybe then can we clarify that situation?
Yeah.
And then find out what the situation is in relation to that. But if not, can I then put it to the vote?
He wants to speak.
Sorry. Oh, sorry, Richard, sorry.
Yeah. As this is a new thing and we want to encourage this sort of thing, isn't it worth just paying a little bit like this to get it going, and then we can amend it later on?
Yeah, I see your point, Richard. And, you know, obviously this will be part as well of, you know, let's be honest, the Austrian Centre, there's been nothing going on there for a year now. We need to get something going there. And also it's a good way of getting some repairs done there as well.
Yeah, I totally get what Carrie's saying.
Yeah.
Get it going now and then look at charging.
Yeah.
Maybe Paul can shed some light on it because he's got his hand up.
Yeah, thanks. I think that what the intention was that the buskers would be there at the market day, but if that proves successful, they'd also be there at other days as well. Yeah. Other Saturdays throughout the summer. So they obviously, you couldn't expect OCA to pay that when they're just playing outside the Ostream and there's no market going on.
Okay.
And I think the other thing was that the OCA were going to do all the administrating of the market. They were going to get the bookings. They were going to provide all the tables and everything and arrange all that. So that's their side of it, and that's why I think the intention was that they would keep the income.
Okay, thank you for that, Sarah.
No, it's okay. That was Paul cleared it up for me.
Yes.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay, then. So can I just put that to the vote? All those in favour of the recommendation? Sorry, Ian, you were trying to speak again? Sorry.
Yeah, I know it's mentioned on the proposal, but you know, just to remind councillors that the trial market is heading for the 29th of May, and it's subject to the loose stonework and the paving being repaired. Otherwise, it's a non-starter because we can't be inviting people there if the underfoot conditions aren't satisfactory.
That's a good point, Ian.
Happy to add that to
I vote in favour of it, but you know, subject to the safety factors.
Good point, Ian.
Ian, can we add that to the proposal that's subject to the stonework being secured outside Ostream?
Okay, so with the amended proposal, all those in favour? Yes, okay, again. So questions to the chair of the Cultural and Tourism and Wellbeing Committee. Any questions?
Bloody hell, that's a first.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
You usually got 4 from the same person.
Right, number 10. Okay, number 10, recommendations by the Community and Social Wellbeing Committee.
Do you want me to?
Yeah, this is it.
Go.
You pick this up. It's about the Langley Bay tennis courts again. Go on.
Yeah, okay. So I have written a little paper about this, which hopefully you've had a chance to have a look at. The objective here is to better understand the demand for various different sports before we make any long-term decisions about the use of Court 3. We have spent a lot of council time talking about what to do with Court 3, and I would like us to maintain the momentum that we've had over the last year into the next year of actually doing things rather than talking about them. And I think that this proposal enables us to get some really robust evidence about what the demand is for the use of the courts at Langland. And that should help us not just for what decisions we make in the future about Court 3, but also about any other courts that we are able to take control over. So the proposal is in the short to medium. This is a short to medium term proposal. I described it as quick and dirty in the committee meeting. So it is to paint the lines repaint the tennis lines on Court 3 and add in basketball and netball lines, and also to install basketball hoops at either end of the court. This has become quite urgent because, as the member of the public who was speaking at the beginning mentioned, the use of indoor facilities is obviously vastly reduced because of COVID. We know that there's been demand for basketball for quite some time, and indeed there has been budget for this in this year for basketball, but that was thinking about ad hoc social play. And we've since become aware that there's actually coached teams of locals, both of basketball and netball, who are really in dire need of facilities. So we'd paint the lines. Now that we've voted on the gate system, we would use that gate system to understand what the court is being booked for. We would therefore be able to collect evidence of what the demand is for those sports. And of course, we do need to ask Swansea Council permission to be able to use the court for purposes other than tennis, but we don't anticipate that that will be an issue. So yeah, as I mentioned in my paper, it's a way of people being able to vote with their feet, and should hopefully protect the investment that we've put into courts 1 and 2 as well, by offering a space for people who have been using the courts that have been newly refurbished for purposes other than tennis, I'm sorry to say.
Okay, any questions, any points anybody wants to raise? Will? It's Will and then Pip.
No, Pip, go first, go on.
Go on, Pip.
Yeah, it's just I'm I'm all for muggers and muggers. I think it's great. The kids got something to nice to hear the lady earlier on talking about the netball. Just one slight concern, Rebecca, is just that this won't compromise our approach to Swansea City with regards to Court 4 in any way, do you think? You don't think it'll sort of say, we don't need it for tennis, we don't need that court? Okay.
So just to clarify, this is not a mugger. And I think it's really important that we understand that, because a mugger could send, it does send a different message, doesn't it? But this is, we're going to repaint the lines for tennis because we know there's strength of feeling and interest in tennis, but we also want to paint the lines for netball and basketball. And to me, that demonstrates not just demand for one sport on those 4 courts, but potentially demand for 3 sports. And so I think it actually strengthens our argument to Swansea Council that we should be able to take on Court 4 and keep it as a sports and recreation facility.
Okay, good answer, thank you.
Just a clarification on this. I did speak to Rebecca earlier on about this, that the data that we will be able to collect will be able to let us know what sports the people will play in. Is that correct? I just wanted to clarify that.
Yes.
Will?
Yeah, thanks, Martin. And I have spoken to Rebecca previously. She's alleviated some of my concerns around the sort of markings which would be on the which I thought would have been overlapping on the tennis court. So it's good to hear that that they won't sort of be overlapping on the tennis court. So that's one of the main concerns that I had. I think it's fantastic to have more sports provision down at Langland. All the tennis courts that are in play are all heavily used. Okay, they are well used. It is a well-used facility, and the only things I'd say is, have we done a review into where else a netball or basketball court could go in the area? So that would be my first question. Have we had anyone look into that?
Do you want to answer that first?
Yeah. I've got a couple of questions.
If you could respond, and then I'll bring Rebecca Child in then.
Sorry, I've got a couple of questions, Chair.
Sorry. Sorry.
Give me all your questions, Will, and I'll do them all at once.
Okay. Right. So the second question would be, if the basketball is being played, how would the nets be taken down by the people using it for the tennis net? Sorry, would they be taken down by the people playing basketball, and if so, are they I suppose qualified, or are they able to just put them slot them back in? I'm not sure how easy it is for them to go out and in. So is that going to be an issue? Secondly, was on the sort of usage of we can't put floodlights, to my knowledge, we can't put floodlights down Langland. I don't think anyone's ever looked into it, to be fair, but I know it's part of the dark skies area, AOMB, so I think it would be quite tricky to do that. So the questions are the nets, double checking the lines don't go over the courts, and the floodlights, and sorry, not the floodlights, the moving out the nets. But my main issue and my main concern is that this does send a message to Swansea Council that we are accepting defeat on that fourth court. And I just think the whole council should, you know, if we just did this next month, this would be perfect on court 4, right? We should be going to Swansea Council saying, we want court 4 as a multi-use games area tennis court. And there is no option for the community not to have it, because this is what we want on there. By doing this on court 3, we're saying, we're pretty much going, right, okay, sell it off you go, in my opinion, right? I know we've got different opinions on this, but I just think the message that we're sending to Swansea Council needs to be, no, we want that court and we want it as a mugger.
Okay, should I just answer those, Martin?
Yeah, if you could, and then I'll bring Rebecca in.
So in terms of review of possible sites, I've spoken to various stakeholders in the basketball and netball arena, and they have assured me there is nowhere else that a full court can go. That's why we're looking at Langland for this, because when we were talking about half courts, there are a range of different sites that a half court could go, but a full court, you know, you need a certain size of space, and so that's why we're looking at Langland. In terms of the nets, yeah, so the tennis net that we would purchase is really straightforward to take up and down. We have not included in the proposal movable basketball hoops, because they are extremely difficult to move, and in fact you wouldn't be able to very safely move them out of the tennis court, and they might actually interfere with tennis play, which we do not want. But the tennis net is, you know, 2 posts on wheels that do move quite easily, so that should be quite straightforward. And in terms of any limits on usage from lighting, I'll be honest, I've not looked into lighting. It would be great to expand the usage if we can light up down there. But at the moment, you know, what I'm hearing is we just need somewhere. Will knows that I completely disagree with him on the message we're sending to Swansea Council with this proposal. I think it sends the message that we are desperate for space, and if we were given court 4, we clearly have a plan of what we would do with it. We're so desperate that we're just going to have to go ahead with this proposal in lieu of having a robust response from them. And then just to clarify with the lines, I have done a mock-up. This is my sketched mock-up, but it looks really untidy. I have got a digital mock-up, but it's equally untidy. The size of a basketball court, it won't quite be a full court, because that would involve basically painting the sidelines on the fences. It'll be just a step in from there. And it means that the external perimeter of both the basketball and the netball courts is outside of the external perimeter of the tennis court. So the tennis markings will still be very, very clear. We're not proposing that we change the colour of the surface. So the green inside the tennis court and the red external bit will stay the same. Tennis will be very, very clear. There is a need for a D in netball and a key in basketball, which is likely to just go over the edge of a tennis court, but the external perimeters will remain the same, so will remain separate, so they don't look too confusing.
So it does go over the court then?
The key bit will go into right. The end of it.
Okay.
Right, well, that's not all that great.
Okay, can I hold on over to Rebecca Child for a maiden speech?
My netball coach would never believe I was here talking in defence of at all from school, but I'll give it a go. Yeah, I think it's fantastic we've found a way for the space to be used for rather than 2 or 4 people for 10 or 14. Think about the amount more residents, you know, the people that can use it. Fantastic. And growing up, I'm only 28, but I never got taught football or rugby. Netball's the only sport they seem to teach girls in school. So actually having a space for something I was taught how to play would be amazing. And that's something I've heard a lot recently, because obviously I've been speaking with a lot of residents recently, and a huge amount of concerns that there's not stuff for particularly young girls, but just young people generally. So if we can equip 14 young people to be doing something rather than 2 or 4, I think that's fantastic. And the other thing on court 4, I think court 4 would be the same as this, where it's that sort of versatile multi-use space where if you can get it, it can be, you can react to the demand from the booking system, where if it turns out everyone has just booked it for tennis, then you go, brilliant, we want this as a tennis space. But if it turns out everyone booked it for basketball, then you realise that probably you're going to need more basketball space, and you have another sort of not Muga. I'm learning my abbreviations. Yeah. Another space that has multiple games. So yeah, I think it's absolutely fantastic and brilliant for just more people, young people and women.
Okay, thank you. Rob, you wanted to speak? You're on mute.
Yeah, it was just to shed a light on the dark skies thing. When we had the meeting with City and County over the cliff face lighting, and it was mentioned about the Dark Skies initiative, we were told that that is not considered for Mumbles, it's considered for rural Gower. So I don't think we can really class Langland Bay as rural Gower. It's a area.
It's part of the AUMB though, which starts at where the lighthouse is, runs along the cliff path, and just takes in the tennis courts at Langland.
Well, what they told us was that the Dark Skies they classed as rural Gower.
Okay, well, we could clarify that at a later date. Ian, did you want to speak?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have a question, actually. When is it envisaged that Court 3 was going to be resurfaced?
Can anybody answer this?
Yeah, I can take that. So no decisions have been made on the future of Court 3, and that is part of the problem. I think we could easily spend the next 6 months discussing amongst ourselves what we think Court 3 should be used for, and we will be no further forward. Another summer will be gone. This is to enable councillors to make informed decisions about what we do in terms of more and longer term investment in Court 3.
Okay, thank you for that. Pamela?
I haven't finished yet.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I've got a few questions, if you don't mind, please.
A few questions. Sorry.
Well, it was always envisaged that that we were to have had 3 tennis courts. So now you're saying that we're not going to have 3 tennis courts.
No, I'm not saying that at all. We will have 3 tennis courts, and we will additionally have a basketball and a netball court.
Yeah, well, we need 3 tennis courts for it to link in with the proposals or the thoughts that we have had on having tennis tournaments there. And ideally, we needed 4 for that. And then there was a suggestion that if we got Court 4 would be then designated as multi-use. Now, you know, what you're suggesting about this basketball and this netball, well, it's a sad indictment, actually, that there isn't such a facility for those that want to play that game. But there's only so much that MCC can do. You know, I don't say it's a case of robbing Peter to pay Paul here. You know, where are these basketball and netball teams? Are there such a thing in the area?
Yeah. Can I answer those questions?
Yeah.
I was just going to clarify that there will still be 3 tennis courts, and they will be bookable using our booking system for any tournaments or coaching days. There will be tennis provision across the 3 courts, and I will let Pam tell us about all the teams that have been in touch.
Well, firstly, thank you to Rebecca, because she's collated a huge amount of research and information into quite a straightforward report. So thank you very much for putting that together. I took the netball end on this after I was deluged with replies when I put a simple request out, well, what do you think you need? I didn't know much about it, so I went out to ice on a cold winter's evening, and it was only the under 13s were playing. There were 20 under 13s. The rain was coming across sideways. It was hailstones. There were 4 coaches, and they were all up there playing in the pouring rain. There was a court just inside the school, but they weren't allowed to go in there. I've had 6 different netball coaches get in touch with me who run women's coaches, women's teams, the schools teams, youth teams, and the young teams, saying, if you put a court there, we will be playing on it non-stop. We can't get on the Bishopston course to play there. We've got to go right to the other side of Swansea. There is a huge number of teams who just have nowhere else to play, and they're looking for an outside court. I'm just reading what I've got here. And that's what they've said. They just can't wait for there to be another court that's accessible for them. And this includes one coach who's very way up in Welsh netball. So the huge demand for netball and for the girls to have something is really, really big. You know, we're spending 1.4 million on Underhill, which is mainly boys and youths and men to play football and rugby. We spent 89,000 on the tennis court so far. We're only looking for 10,300 for the netball and basketball combined. But as for the tennis tournaments, we need 4 courts for that. Well, there's nothing stop us doing that. I've talked to them and they said, well, you could quite have qualification rounds in Mumbles on the tennis courts and in Langland, where we would find a whole new audience for tennis with people in Mumbles. But then you could have a Langland tournament finals day and have that as the big day on Langland. So tennis won't be knocked out of the frame at all. He's got other facilities he can have. But I think we have to be fair to all of the different people. We've put money into the skate park, Underhill, tennis, bowls. We've got the lease for that. How much is going to cost that to put the bowls put together properly? God only knows. Cycling, we've done it for everything else. We've done nothing to netball and basketball, and especially girls' sports, in all the time that I've been here. So I think it's a reasonable request. I don't think it's unreasonable for them to be asking us for this. And if you've got all these coaches who are coming up, there's another netball meeting at 7 o'clock, and they were all lined up to speak to you at 6:15, and they had to go for a Welsh Netball Association meeting at 7 o'clock, which is only Helen was left here. Everybody was online ready to come on ready. There's a huge demand for netball, huge, from the age of under 13s up to the women who are playing, as Helen says, in their 40s, and they have very little as experience.
Okay, thank you for that. Right. Can we move things on a bit? Yeah, Ian, do you want to respond? Then I'll bring Sarah in.
Yes, thanks very much, Chair. That was a little bit of a tirade that went on for ages. You know, I'm not against this, you know, but there's got to be a bit of fair play here. You know, if you're going to have, you know, 5 minutes, you know, singing the praises of such a thing, well, you know, I can have 5 minutes as well. You were complaining about the timeline earlier, but, you know, you were going on and on there. Now, there's a basketball court, you're saying, at Bishopston. I'm really not familiar where these facilities are, basketball or netball. I'm a bit past that by now. You know, you're using the fact that there's rugby being played by men and boys in Underhill, and there's nothing for the girls. There are a tremendous number of girls that play soccer down at Underhill. There are a lot of girls that play rugby these days. You know, you can't go selecting and making comments that you can't really fully substantiate. You know, it's disingenuous. The thing here is, I'm only too well aware of how many courts we need for the Langland tennis tournament. Now, going back to 2017, we've been trying to get this Langland tennis courts thing up and running, and you've been a constant one to undermine it, along with the city council. Now, you've moved on from somewhere else, and now you're targeting the Langland tennis courts. Now, Langland tennis courts should be for tennis. And that's it, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, thank you for that, Ian. I'll bring Sarah in now, but can we at least try to move this on a bit now?
Yes, I think we have 2 tennis courts. It's not much if the people in the community ask for a basketball stroke netball court that we offer them that facility. It's our job. They pay taxes too. The actual tennis tournament, if it does get played, 1 week a year, are we really going to sacrifice everyone else's sporting ambitions to play for that? It's we can use that tennis court on that week. It's not stopping that. So I think we should just go for the vote and vote for the youth as well.
Okay, Louise, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know too much about the tennis courts at the moment, so I'm a bit sort of new to this. What's the situation with the local public having access to the tennis courts at night? Can anybody go into those courts?
Rebecca?
Yeah, I'll
can
just
you-
take that question. So at the moment, yes, anyone can go into those courts at any time. But with the gate that we've just voted on earlier, that's one of the questions we'll refer back to committee is, do we want to have a shut off time where we lock them up so that they're kind of protected through the night?
Yeah, because obviously my experience, I'm an ex-police officer, and a lot of my antisocial calls were to basketball courts. So you've got a lot of kids at a certain time at night. I absolutely love netball and I think it's one of the best sports going, but you have to consider that you are going to attract a certain amount of children in that area and possibly at night. And I am speaking from experience here.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that experience, Louise.
Thank you.
I would just say that, we will be in touch with PCSOs when we're determining, the system that we put in place with the gate, because those sorts of things will be taken into consideration.
Okay.
Sorry, Chair, can I just, I need to reply to that quickly, just a short reply. We already have crime problems. We have problems with young people who don't have anything to do. I think it's silly to say, well, let's not give them anything to do then, and then we'll just accuse them of hanging around the tennis courts or something. Sorry.
Okay, well.
Thanks, Chair. And to be fair, I'm not sure that's what Louise was saying there, Sarah. But anyway, I know you want to move this on, Chair, but this is quite important to myself and a number of others. So I would appreciate it if we can, not rush through it. The basketball. I think I was the one who put basketball forward for the budget this year, right? So I can't be accused of that. Myself and Miles have donated over £1,000 of our ward budget to Mumbles Netball Club as well. So without them contacting us, we actively got in touch with them to see what they needed. There is a tradition of tennis at Langland, and it is a strong tradition. And obviously, if those courts aren't being as tennis courts and they're empty, then yeah, it makes sense to use it as for a different sport. So I'm open to the idea, although I personally do think it is a busy enough tennis area, and we should be looking to have it as a separate facility somewhere else. But it's a lot of support for this. So all I would ask is that we have an amendment to add in that, if Court 4 becomes available, that it gets moved to Court 4, this proposed basketball netball facility, because I do want to keep up the pressure on Swansea Council for the Swansea Council not to sell off another key asset. We seem to have rollen over and died on the double court, and yeah, let's see what comes up. Let's see what comes in for the proposals there before we get too irate about the sale of that. But for them to sell off 3 tennis courts, in my opinion, is just too much. So, let's try and get this multi-use facility on Court 4. And if they don't give us Court 4, then, so be it. Through gritted teeth, I think it'd be better somewhere else, but, I'd support it. But I would like it on Court 4 personally. So that's what I'm asking as amendment.
Okay. So you're asking for what's the amendment you're asking for, Will? Could you just
basically I suppose in the situation where Swansea Council don't sell off Court 4, which we should find out about next month, which is why I said at the beginning that we should really be doing this next month when we know what's happening with that court. But if people can't wait till then in the eventuality that they don't sell that 4th court, that this multi-use facility is moved
to the 4th court.
To the 4th court, yeah.
Okay, Pip. You're on mute, Pip.
Thank you. Just on a practical note, a second. Just Rebecca, for your committee, do you have any budget left? I'm just thinking we could get Court 3 looking a lot better for not a lot of money. We could probably power wash it without a direct power wash, but just gently power wash it. It just looks like you've got 2 brilliant courts and then you've got a derelict court. I think we could sort of tart it up a little bit, for want of a better expression, to make it look a lot more usable. The surface isn't too bad. You can actually play tennis on it, but maybe, £100 we can make it look a lot better. in the short term?
Yeah, was that a question to me, Pip?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, so this proposal is suggested to be from underspend of the small and medium grants budget, and actually there is underspend to spare. So certainly, you know, we could add that in to power wash it, as you say, and just, yeah, give it a good sweep down, I suppose. I just wanted to say on Will's point about moving it to court 4, you know, the first thing we have to do is ask Swansea Council's permission to use the court for purposes other than tennis. So, you know, we can get the ball rolling on this. And as you know, the clerk has advised me that we are anticipating a response on court 4 as soon as possible, or very soon rather. So, you know, we could potentially look at it being on court 4 rather than on court 3. I don't really mind where it is as long as it's a basketball and netball court. And just to reiterate and to underscore, you know, that this protects tennis at Langland in my view. It means that we are, you know, repainting the lines. People can use it for tennis if they want to, and it only adds to the facility at Langland. It does not take anything away. I do think, Chair, we ought to be moving to a vote. I've taken up way too much time of this council's meeting already.
That's what I mean. And saying that on that point there, so if we say we will approach City and County of Swansea and see if we can put this on court 4, but we will have to ask for a change of use anyway.
No.
It'll
take time, so much time.
Well, we're going to have to ask for a change.
Can I come in, please?
Hold on. Just let me make the point that I'm trying to make, right? Is because both Will and Rebecca seem to be saying that they've got no real objection to this going on to court 4. We're going to have to ask Swansea Council permission to use the court for a purpose other than tennis. So can we not ask this question at the same time?
So just to clarify what I was saying, Martin, we should get a response to our expression of interest on court 4 soon.
Yeah.
You know, obviously there will be a whole long process of us, if we are successful in us taking it on. So I think we should move on putting it on court 3 in the short term, but I don't see a reason why in the longer term, when we're looking at our longer term investment down there, it could be on court 4.
Just a point of information, Chair, is a point of information very quickly. It's going to, the developer is being chosen in July cabinet, not anything. We will know next week what the plans are for court 4. The developer has been chosen in July cabinet, yes.
So Pam and then Sarah, and then we'll have to go to vote.
The only problem with Will's amendment is he's putting a stipulation that will tie our hands for later down the line, whereas the whole precept of this was we are going to do a huge public consultation. We're going to see who uses the court and what uses are most down there. So if it comes across that basketball and netball far outweigh tennis, then we're tying our hands by saying we're not going to use it anyway. Surely the consultation over the next month or 2 is the most important thing, rather than tying ourselves up with amendments. Let's just get in there and get something done.
I don't think personally. I don't think. Personally, I don't think Will's suggested amendment does say that, but I will let Will speak for himself. But I will go on to Sarah now.
Right, I was going to say that we thought this would be an incredibly positive thing for Langland over the summer, because we've had teams reach out to us. If they can use that space during the summer months, it will say a lot to Swansea Council that we're not just hung up on just tennis, that this space means far more than that, and it can be multi-use. I think that's a big selling point, but we really need to move as quickly as we can. Otherwise, to actually go on about court 4 is actually a red rag to a bull to them at the moment, because it looks like we're playing politics with it, which is, I'm afraid, what Will's trying to do.
I swear I'm not, right? These are the comments that waste time, right? Chair Shah has already said that. She's repeated herself, right? I've given you new information every time I've spoken, right? That is just like rinse, repeat. There's just no point in that comment, right? What I'm trying to say is if you think I'm trying to drag it out, which I am not, God's honest truth, right? So how about if we haven't heard from Swansea Council by the end of June, about court, about whether it can go on court 4 or not, then we put it on court 3. It's not my motivation to drag anything out at all. What I want is for it to go on court 4, because we need to protect as much space as we can. We need to be telling Swansea Council we need that.
Okay, Rebecca Child.
Oh, you just found the mute button. Yeah, I think the idea is to have 3 courts, one that can be used for other things. And then if you can get court 4, which I think everyone is united on wanting, that you'd have 4 tennis courts with one that could be used for other things, maybe 2 if it's overwhelming that everyone is using them for other things. But don't want to repeat anything. So can we please just move to a vote and vote on Rebecca's original motion? Because we've gone back and forth and I'm aware even I'm repeating, trying not to.
Well, you better get used to this. Okay,
so,
well,
so you're not prepared to accept the amendment, Rebecca? You're not prepared to budge on that amendment, even though I said with that time frame?
I don't think there's appetite on this meeting for that amendment, to be honest.
Okay, so shall we put it to the vote then without the amendment as it stands at the moment? All those in favour?
Sorry, the screen is dark. Can we see everybody?
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Steve, can you be counting these? Steve there?
Yeah.
We need to get,
Okay.
yeah. All those against? 6.
Well, I want to vote on an amendment, to be honest. I don't want to vote against it. I want to amend it. But, yes, I'm aware of that, thanks.
Yeah, so it's 3, 4. So it's carried. Okay. Is that correct, Steve?
It is, Chair, yes.
Okay, then. So if we move on to the grant request from Colady Housing and Support Limited, grant request for £996 towards the community fridge scheme. Recommended that grant be made with funds from CS1 small and medium grants budget. Anybody want to come in? Any questions on this, or should I just move it straight to vote?
Vote.
Okay, all those in favour? Okay, any against? No, so that's carried. Grant request for Sculpture by the Sea. 2,600 towards the annual festival. Recommended that the grant be made for funds, small and medium grants for £2,600. Anybody want to make any comments on this? If not, I will move it straight to vote again. All those in favour? Okay, any against? So that one's carried again. So questions to Chair and Community and Social Wellbeing Committee. Any questions? No.
Yeah, I got a question.
Sorry.
Would she be prepared to write to Swansea Council reminding them of how important Court 4 is to Mumbles Community Council and the residents of Mumbles?
I would be delighted. And I will make the argument that I have made here, that, you know, what we've just voted on demonstrates the demands that we have for that space.
Okay, happy with that, Will? Well, sort of. Yeah, so if you could write to the council. Mumbles Tennis Court, this is Mumbles Tennis Courts now. Community consultation recommended that a further £500 be spent on consultation from the underspent J11 community consultation budget. Anybody want to comment on this one way or the other?
Yes.
Yes, Ian.
Why do we feel the need that we have to spend a further £500? It's not that long since we spent £800.
Does the chair of the committee want to come back on this?
You're on mute, Gareth.
So I think Carrie might be able to give an answer, or Rebecca might have an answer. There's a bit of lap over here between Langland and Oysmouth, and I think that's the reason why we wanted to do specifically Oystermouth rather than just tennis courts and Broad?
Shall I take it? Because
Yeah.
Okay.
So the detail of this consultation is being determined by Community and Social Wellbeing Committee, but the budget sits with JEC, so it's a bit complicated. Basically, in the work that we've done with Alain so far on the consultation, we've identified the stakeholders that we want to reach and make sure that we get their view as a priority. And one of the ways in which we could do that is to do things like targeted Facebook ads. I think it was Well who suggested that. And there will be other kind of resources that we need in order to be able to reach people, printed resources and things like that, to ask certain questions. So I think the previous amount agreed has covered Alain's fee, and this is to top up for the actual resources of actually doing the consultation. But please note that it is up to a further £500, and we don't necessarily anticipate spending all of that.
Yeah.
Okay, Ian.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. That's exactly what was discussed.
Okay, yeah.
Right, hang on a second, can I come in here? I was interrupted with Carrie there. The thing is, there's a presentation being given to council on Wednesday with regards to the seawall defences. Now, we've also had communication confirmed by City that they want to use the Oystermouth Terrace courts as a dumping ground, as a compound, whilst those works are taking place. Now, you know, you're talking about another £500. Have we had anything from any additional correspondence from City to say that they're not going to use it as a dumping compound?
Not that I'm aware.
You know, pardon?
So not that I'm aware anything back about that, but this, at the end of the day, Ian, we still need to get the consultation as to when the seawall's finished and the courts become available, what are we going to do with the courts in Mumbles? Yeah. We still need the answers from the people who are using them within the village.
Yeah.
Well, what I hear from the people is what Pam hears from the netball players, and that they want the tennis courts to remain in Oystermouth, and they want the tennis courts to remain in Langland.
That's right.
Yeah, well, to be honest, that's one of the things.
You know, but there seems to be a constant group of people that want to change the agenda all the time here.
No.
Can I just clarify something, Martin? I think, because what I've understood from what Ian's just said is that he thinks that this consultation is kind of us trying to create evidence that there's an appetite for change, and I think it's actually the opposite.
Well, sorry to interrupt, but I think there is a possibility when you start talking about a consultation on Facebook. You know, it's like the survey that you did with the skate park. You know, you asked a question, oh, would you like to have a skate park?
Oh, again.
And then all of a sudden, everybody went on to Monkey and said, oh yeah, we want a skate park. Well, that's not a proper survey. Going on to Facebook isn't a proper survey. The tennis courts in Oystermouth are used. The tennis courts in Langland are used. The leader of the council, Rob Stewart, said they weren't used. Of course they're used. Both separate lots of tennis courts are in use regularly. And I see that on Facebook too.
Okay, and I think what we need to do is, we can't do it here and now, but I think we need to clarify the situation with the tennis courts in Oystermouth. You know, one of the things that has come back from the consultation exercise that Alain has done so far is exactly what you're saying there, is this desire that it be kept for tennis courts. So I think there needs to be sort of some clarification there. Yes, we know that the land is going to be used for a compound, a works compound for when they're doing the seawall area. But at the same time, we have also got the other areas there, like the bowling green and the areas that are going to be left. And it'll be important, as you know, there's a lot of community activity, a lot of community groups which are already moving for some developments at the at those tennis courts areas, and it's very important that we collect the evidence so that we don't, just give it over to whatever group shouts the loudest. Pam.
The advice we had directly from Jamie Ruwich and Lewis Hines at Swansea City Council was, yes, the courts will not become available until the next 3 or 4 years. But if we have done the work and we've done our consultations and we can give to them, to Swansea City Council, our long-term projections about what plans we have, then that will figure into their plans as well. If we don't do these consultations, then we can't prove to them that we're willing to work long-term and we know what we're doing. And that's advice directly from them to us on this particular subject.
Okay, thank you for that. So can I suggest Rebecca Singh?
Yeah, hi. Yeah, well, Pam's right that we'll need evidence, but I'm also inclined to agree with Ian that Facebook isn't a tool, certainly not a tool to use alone for it.
No.
And perhaps something more directly, like something actually physically at the tennis courts, just as backup. That should you know people have been there, as well, would help. Or
just to clarify there, Rebecca, as well, is we have worked with Alan in the past. Although he might include something like Facebook in part of a community consultation exercise, I'm sure he won't base the whole community consultation exercise on just a Facebook survey. And
they're exciting, don't they? Yeah, I've got excited by them.
Yeah.
And again, it's a long time, isn't it, for the tennis courts to be out of use if they are used as a rubble court. And also, if they're going to be used as a rubble court, well, it seems like a waste to, I don't know, at the same time, there's less incentive to maintain them until that point, isn't it?
Well, yeah, this is one of the points that have been made by local people, isn't it? But they sort of say that they're just being run down so that it can be turned over to car parking. But I think that's another issue. Carrie?
Yeah, having been at the meeting where we discussed this, I don't think there was any suggestion at any point that this would be a Facebook survey.
No.
We talked about a whole range of different things, including things like having a stall at the market, having, where people could come and give their views. We talked about talking to actually individuals and groups face to face. Facebook is just one of many avenues that this money would be put towards. Yeah. There's no way we would want to spend £500 on Facebook.
Okay, Rebecca, and then can we maybe move this on?
Yeah, so I hope this is the
we only
last
talked
point.
about 5.
I just want to clarify. I don't think I was clear enough in my opening statement on this issue. The consultation will be varied in its approach. I gave targeted Facebook ads as one example because it was a very specific thing that Will had suggested. That means that we can reach our key stakeholders that we have identified as priority stakeholders. I think it is worth saying for the public record that it is probably the view of everybody on this meeting that Mumbles Tennis should remain in the public realm as a sport and recreation facility at the very least, and some would go as far as to say needs to remain as tennis. And I think the reason that we all think this is urgent and needs to get done is because we want the people of Mumbles to know that we are on their side when it comes to that. And the consultation gives us the opportunity to gather that evidence so that we can use it in our conversations about with city and county about this. I'm very much looking forward to the meeting tomorrow. We weren't aware of that meeting when we put forward this proposal, but I don't think it's too much to ask to have a little bit of extra money for us to have the resources, both physical in terms of being out and about on the streets, but also maybe some digital ways of reaching people to be able to gather that evidence. So I hope that just puts people's minds at rest. It's not just a Facebook
thing. Okay, can I suggest then that we put it to the vote? All those in favour of this recommendation, I'll go for it. Any against? There we go. That's one's carried again. Review of staff grading capacity. this is Appendix 9, you can have a look at the document there, a quote from One Voice Wales. Recommended the quote of 1,995 from One Voice Wales be undertaken. This is for a review of staff grading and capacity. This was being discussed at previous meetings. Anybody want to comment on these? If not, I'll move it to vote. All those in favour of accepting this recommendation? Anybody against? Therefore, that's accepted as well. Questions to chair of the Joint Enabling Committee? Any questions? No. Right. Recommendations for Environmental Wellbeing Committee, Flora for Schools. Consider the funds of £1,700 Flora for Schools budget.